Well, good morning. Thanks, Colonel Lowe and Dean Cass. The ultimate of hospitality, Dean Cass, let me have a parking spot this morning. So that's about as good. He offered it yesterday. He probably didn't think I was going to take it, but I did. So, you know, I've been in your seat a lot of times, and I know this is a point where I'm supposed to say how excited and thrilled and proud I am to be here. And actually, I am all of those things, but most of all, I'm really surprised to be here. I mean, I really thought the only reason I'd be back in Bowling Green after I graduated was to visit a parole officer. So, fortunately, I didn't have to do that. So, the good news today is these are my notes. So, I'm not going to read a speech to you. The bad news is these are my notes. So, I'm probably going to ramble a little bit. I'm probably going to get off subject. I'm probably say a little bit. So, hope you'll accept that. But we're having a good conversation. That's what I'd like to do this morning. So I'm going to do three things. I'm going to talk a little bit about my company that I've been at for 31 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk about leadership as advertised. So ESCO Technologies, I got to get the click here. ESCO Technologies was a spinoff of Eminence Electric in 1990. We're a very diversified business, as you can see. The way I describe our business is we're a manufacturer of highly engineered products for niche industrial markets. A lot of our employees, so the big thing is they're technical products, highly engineered. 15 to 20% of our employees are engineers, but we do manufacture a lot of our own products. And we made the decision to be in a variety of different markets on purpose, because it's a relatively small public company, and our market cap fluctuates between $1.4 billion and $1.5 billion. We think we need that diversification of markets, of products, of end markets for stability and also for flexibility. If you think about it, we're a very flexible company because we have 4 different areas, and so if one of them slows down, we can make an acquisition in the other, we can allocate capital to one of the other. So diversification for us is really a good thing. You can see the relative size of the business. We'll do something over $600 million in sales this year. You can see the relative profitability of each of the businesses. A couple things that help us is we have a lot of recurring business. So it's a lot of the business that we have, we go into the year with a pretty good backlog, understand where a lot of the other business is going to come from. In addition to that, a lot of our products are proprietary. And with proprietary products, you're a lot stickier with the customers, and you can usually make more money, which is a good thing. So we have 4 segments. Our fluid flow and filtration business. Across the top, you see the types of products we make. You'll never see our products. Well, for the most part, I'll point out a couple. But you really won't see our products because they're buried inside of other products or vehicles to make them perform well. So in this area, we really control the flow of fluid, whether it be water, hydraulic fluid, or fuel. The main applications are for the aerospace and the space industry. We also do some work for the Navy with submarines, but you see the Mars rover, we're on Mars right now. So we make flow control valves that run every piece or every stage of that launch. We were in a launch vehicle, we're in a descent vehicle, and we now have product on the rover. Second business is our utility services business, our utility business. What we do here is we make test equipment to test electrical transformers. So you see these big electrical transformers, they cost anywhere from $1 to $10 million a piece. So we want to make sure they're performing efficiently, and you want to make sure you're able to leave them in the field as long as possible. Because if you take them out any sooner, that's a real big investment that you have to make. But you don't want to leave them in the field too long, because if you do, they can blow up, they can catch on fire, and as a minimum, you're going to have power outages, which customers don't like, therefore utility executives don't like. So we actually make the equipment itself to do that. We have a huge database to do comparative analysis with. We also have field service engineers. We have forensic people that look at failure. So it's a very complex business, but a very niche-y, but we're the world's leader in this. We have 95% market share in the U.S., and about 50% market share outside of the U.S. And those of you that don't know, 95% market share means good margins. So that's key. So this is a cool picture. We do RF shoot and a test. This is a crucible test chamber we do. That's a phantom head with a cell phone on it. So what we do in this market, and again, these are all niche markets, every piece of electronics gives off radio frequency signals. So one thing you have to understand in the new product development phase is, am I going to have interference? So there are very specific tests called electromagnetic compatibility and electromagnetic interference testing. And again, you want to make sure that the onboard electronics in your car aren't going to interfere with each other, or your cell phone and your printer, whatever the case may be. So we make the environment to do those types of tests. Very specialized business. Again, you can see some of the large chambers. We make everything from actually building the chambers themselves. You put shielding inside of it, you put ferrite tile inside of that, carbon impregnated foam absorber. You got positioning equipment, you got antennas, you got the software that drives the test. So we're really the only people in the world that do a full turnkey approach here. A lot of people provide bits and pieces, but we're the people that really bring it all together. And we've made chambers small enough to put a cell phone in. We've actually made them large enough to hang 2 fighter aircraft in. Because what they were trying to understand is if there was going to be interference when they were flying in formation, which is a good thing to learn when you're hanging in a chamber and not flying in formation. You see a picture of an MRI here. If I talked a lot about each of our businesses, not only are we diversified as a corporation, but within each of our businesses, there's a lot of diversification. So I'll just talk about this one, but it would be the same way everywhere. So in addition to what I just talked about, every MRI has to be in a shielded room. Because what you're doing is you're keeping those radio frequency signals out of the room, because if they get in, they distort the picture quality. So we do that. We also have an acoustic test business where we're testing acoustical properties of everything from keyboards to curtains to cell phones to you name it, it is acoustically tested. We make chambers to do that. And then we also, for all the U.S. embassies around the world, to keep people from eavesdropping, we shield those as well. And then our last business is our technical packaging business. A lot of people would say, how's this a highly engineered product? Well, the markets we participate in are primarily medical, so the tolerances are very tight. The cleanliness requirements are very strict. The design that has to go into these, there's a lot of design that goes into it. So it really is a technical product. And I'll point out one, you see the thermometer at the bottom of the picture. We don't make those. But the little plastic caps you shoot in a trash can, we do make those. And again, people could say, how's that a technical product? Well, 2 things. First of all, the tolerances had to be so exacting because you're taking a temperature, right? So if the plastic's too thick, it's going to underread and vice versa. The other thing is we make 1 billion of these a year. And I can tell you, if you make 1 billion of anything, you got to be pretty good at what you do. So we've made 1 billion of these a year for the past 5 years and have never had a return. We are an international company. About 30% of our business is located outside of the U.S. Everywhere where you see a color, we sell product or services. Everywhere you see a red dot, we have a location. The majority of these are manufacturing locations. Some of the locations in Europe and Asia are actually sales, service, engineering design, customer support type of locations, but the majority of them are manufacturing locations. Our largest location outside the U.S. is in China. Something unique, though, we actually ship more product to China than we manufacture there. And we don't bring anything back to the U.S. And that's really the same with all of our locations. We really sell to the local market. The only exception there is we do some manufacturing in Mexico that we bring back into the U.S., but that's a very small portion of our business. So that's the company. I'd be glad to answer your questions. We get to that piece of it. Myself, I was born actually in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I moved to Hopkinsville when I was very young. Moved to Owensboro when I was 5 years old and lived there till I came to West. My parents were both from Glasgow. My dad was a civil servant and Army reservist his whole career. My mom was a homemaker. My dad's mom was from Glasgow. She worked at the Handmacher factory, which probably isn't there anymore. But it was a women's suit factory. She did handwork. My mom's parents were sharecroppers and lived in Glasgow or outside of Glasgow. So I tell you all that to tell you, I'm a Kentucky boy through and through. Really am. Spent my whole life here until I get out of school. So when it came time to go to college, I will be honest, for me, college was a means to an end. And that end was to go in the military. I mean, I wanted to be an Army officer. I knew I needed to go to college to do that. I didn't do a great job of planning things, but I was very lucky to end up at a place like Western. I mean, it was such a perfect fit for me, just from the environment that was here, the people, the instructors. I mean, it was really a place that I was able to excel. And so it was, I won't say by happenstance, but I was very fortunate. A lot of things in my life have been luck rather than really a lot of prior planning, but this was a great fit for me. And the other thing I should say is I never took a business class. So it seems a little odd that I'm talking to the business school, but I had a degree in political science and a degree in sociology. And I think I took one math class because I had to, but that's a whole different story, and probably barely passed it. So after I got out of college, I did go in the military. I was a military intelligence officer for 6 years, and I loved it. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I will say, though, the time I was in, people weren't shooting at us. So it's a much different thing than when Colonel Lowe was in, and the people that are going in now. It was peacetime, but it was a great opportunity. I mean, I got to jump out of airplanes. I got to rappel out of helicopters. I got to shoot stuff. So it was really fun. But more importantly, it really taught me some life lessons, I would say, and really did help me as I started my career in civilian life, because you get a lot of experience at a very young age, a lot of experience at a really young age without a lot of training. And within a year, I had a responsibility for 30 people, and more importantly, 30 personalities. And I think you really learn how to deal with people when you have that many different personalities at one point. So after I got out, I did decide to get out of the Army after 6 years. I really did enjoy it, but I thought sleeping on the ground when you're 25 is one thing, 45 is probably another. So I'm gonna try something different. And I was very, very lucky that I got an entry-level job at Emerson Electric in their largest defense business. I was wildly unqualified for it. Just quite honestly, it was in finance. Again, no business classes, so not really qualified, but they were hiring people as hard and fast as they could at the time. And I think they saw some potential that maybe I could at some point do something. So I started as an electronics cost estimator. I didn't know what I was interviewing for until the day I got there, and I wasn't sure after I left what I had interviewed for, but I got the job. Within 2 years, I was running a department, which still is amazing to me. But what really made the difference in my career is there was a job that opened up, and it was called Assistant to the President of our subsidiary. So I interviewed for the job. I got the job. I think one of the primary reasons I got the job was the guy who was working for was an ex-naval aviator. So he went to Naval Academy, and so I think he liked the fact that I'd been in the military. And so I went to work for him. It was supposed to be a 2-year job. 6 years later, I left. But there was some transition there. 2 years into the job, when I should have been rotating out, we got spun off from Emerson. He said, "You need to stay, help me through the transition." And just so you understand kind of what the job was, I mean, I was his right-hand person, but I wrote his speeches. If they're all-employee communications, I did that. I mean, I attended every meeting he went to, whether it was a board meeting, a strategy session, whatever. So I really learned a lot about the business and about how he did business and how other people did business, the good and the bad of it. So after 4 years, our first chairman went back to Emerson. So my boss got promoted, and the spinoff was more than our company. It was really 5 different companies, about a $500 million business at the time. And he said, "You need to stay 2 more years and help me through this transition." So I did. And after that, I was able to escape and go do some other things. I ran our field offices around the country and around the world. Spent a lot of time with customers, which is what I really love to do, a lot of time with our employees. And so I had a number of different jobs. And then in 2001, he said, "I'm going to retire." And by this time, I was the president of the company. He said, "I'm going to retire, and I'm going to go recruit my replacement." I'm like, "How about me?" And he goes, he said, at some point you could probably do it, but you're 44 years old and you're too young to do it. He didn't say I didn't have enough experience. He said I was too young to do it. Now, fortunately, we had a failed search. After 9 months, he comes in one day and he goes, you know what, Vic, these guys aren't any better than you. I'm going to talk to the board. Maybe you can get the job. So that next year I got promoted and I've been in that role ever since. So it's worked out well for me and it's been a great experience. It's a great company. I'm very prejudiced, but I've had a nice run. So let's talk a little about leadership. Hopefully I'm not talking too long here. So talk a little bit about leadership. The title of my talk is probably incorrect, because if you take it literally, you would say I haven't learned anything about leadership in the past 32 years. Now, some people may agree that that's the fact. I choose to think that I've learned a few things, but certainly the basis of what I learned in the military, and have learned a lot of things since then. But before we get into that, just a couple of things. Don't expect to hear some nugget today that's going to say, boy, I never thought of it that way. These are all basic things. Because for me, leadership is about doing the right thing, taking care of your people, giving your people an environment to be successful in, and making tough decisions. And that's what it's really about. But I would ask you to take some of the things I talk about today, and when you go back and you're interacting with people later today or next week or whenever, think about some of those things. And I think hopefully you'll think about your interactions with people differently, whether it be your peers or your instructors or your boss or your subordinate. So these are very basic things, but obviously everybody doesn't do a good job of these very basic things, or everybody be a good leader, right? And you know what? They're not. And there are a lot of people out there that are terrible. They treat people wrong, they improperly, their ethics issues. Everybody doesn't do it right. So let's think about the things that are the right way to do it and do that. The other thing I'd say before we get into it is leadership's all about observation. If you want to be a good leader, observe the people around you. There are people that you're drawn to, right? That you say, boy, I could really follow this person. I like what they do. And there are some people who are just total tools. And you say, I don't want to be anything like this person. So identify those people and then say, what are the traits? What are they doing that makes me want to follow them? How are they approaching things that make them different than the person I don't want to? And emulate those. So it really is about observation and thinking about what it is that drives you, because whatever drives you is probably going to drive them as well. So with that, let's talk about what I learned in the Army. Now, a lot of people would say, well, it's easy being a leader in the Army, right? You tell people what to do and they do it, right? That's compliant. That's not leadership. And if you think being a leader is getting people to do what you want them to do through compliance, you're not going to be successful. So there's a big difference in those two things. So in the Army, what I learned, the first thing is eat, drink, and sleep after your people. What does that have to do with anything? I mean, think about it. If you're in a chow line and you're a PFC and a lieutenant jumps in the front of the line and starts eating before you, do you think that person has your best interest in heart or their best interest in heart? So it's a simple thing, but if you're filling your canteen first, or you're eating first, or you're getting more sleep than the people who work for you, you're not a leader. And that is very easy to take over to civilian life. I mean, if you're taking care of yourself at work before you take care of your people, people are not going to respect you as a result. Never ask somebody to do something you wouldn't do. Not that you have to do everything, but I can tell you, your people know if you would do it or not. And if you're asking somebody, I want you to go do this and such, and they're thinking, this guy's never going to do that, then they're not going to have respect for you. And that's not what leaders do. Leaders do the tough things themselves. They set the example because everybody's watching. People really, in your organization, pay attention to everything you do. You may not know it, but they are. And the thing I tell people a lot is your organization is going to take on your personality. So if you think, if you see your leader being unethical, taking shortcuts, treat people disrespectfully, that's what they're going to say, that's okay. That's what I'm going to do. But if you have an ethical, way of performing the business. You work hard, you treat people right, you make decisions, then that's what your organization is going to look like. So I tell people if they can start complaining about their organization, they need to go look in the mirror because they're the problem, not their people. You got to challenge people and hold them accountable. I don't mean get in their face, challenge them, but people want to be challenged. High-performing people and high-performing organizations like to be challenged. People don't come to work to turn the crank, at least not high-performing people. They want to come in and say, yeah, I want to go charge that hill today. I want to do something different. I want to make a difference. I want to go home at the end of the day thinking I've really done something. So you got to challenge people, and you have to see if they're up for it. So you do have to hold them accountable because everybody can't do everything. And so as a leader, you have to find out what people can and can't do. This is like the easiest one in the world. Treat people the way you want to be treated. It's a golden rule. But if you think about it from a business perspective or in the military, people are not going to treat you any better than you treat them. So if you want people to respect you and to be led by you, you have to treat them in a way that they're going to feel respected and treat you the same way. So going into some of the civilian things, and I think all these kind of play together, you got to understand the difference in being a leader and being a manager. Back to this compliance thing. I mean, people can manage organizations, they can manage people, they can maybe get a result. But if you want to be, again, a high-performing organization, then it's a lot more. You have to lead an organization and not just manage it. Hire the best and smartest women and men you can afford. Now, in the military, you don't have that option. You get 30 folks and, you got what you got, and you just got to deal with it. But in the civilian world, you get to pick who works there. And you want to hire absolutely the best and smartest people you can afford to hire. And you do that for a lot of reasons. First of all, if you got a good organization, which I think we do, we deserve it. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, my folks all the time, look, it's a good place to work. We treat people with respect. We pay well. Got good benefits. We're ethical. I'm not putting up with somebody that's not really putting out their best. And so we deserve, our organizations deserve to have the best women and men we can hire. And that's what we try to do. The other reason you want to do that is because if you have somebody who's not pulling their weight, everybody else sees it. And everybody else says, oh, this is okay. I don't have to work that hard because that's tolerated. So you really have to make sure you get the best people you can and then hold them accountable. Embrace the difference in people. Now notice I said embrace and not tolerate. I will tell you, this was a very tough one for me to learn as a younger guy. I mean, my view was, I got to figure it out. I know the way you're supposed to act. I know the way you're supposed to think about things, and everybody ought to do it the way I do. That's really short-sighted. Because the reality is, the more diversity you can bring into an organization, the better the organization is going to be. Differences in background, differences in the way critical thinking, the way you approach problems, having differences are the best way to have, again, a high-performing organization. I use that term a lot because I think it's important. But you have to embrace those differences and let people think the way they want to think. Now, at the end of the day, somebody's got to come together and make a decision. But by having that type of diversity within your organization, I think it's really key. Give people responsibility and get out of the way. Again, people want to have responsibility. They want to be challenged. But you have to let them do it. And if you're there looking over their shoulder every day, asking questions, double-checking, then they're going to say, well, you do it. If you want me to really take charge, you want me to take responsibility for it, let me do it. But then the other thing, let's say the second piece of that is follow up because you care, not for compliance. So you want to make sure that people have everything they need to be successful. You want to make sure that they're not struggling. You want to make sure that they have everything they need. But you don't do that just say, oh, you're not doing the right thing, you're out of here. So follow up because you care. Yeah, I think this is key. Give praise often and publicly, and counsel people when necessary, and do that in private. Everybody loves a pat on the back, right? Especially in front of their peers. You did a great job. You know, we had that last night. People love being recognized. You know, you do something good, it's great. I mean, if your boss just, yeah, whatever, then you're not going to feel good about things. So you want to give praise often, give it publicly, make sure people understand that those are behaviors that are reinforced. People screw up sometimes. People do a poor job. But you got to pull them off to the side and say, that didn't really work out the way we'd have wanted to, and I did it. So what can we do differently next time? What can we do to make you successful? But the biggest reason you don't do that publicly, well, number one, it's rude. Number two, everybody else sees that. And if they see, okay, Joe made a mistake and he just got chewed out in front of everybody, then everybody else is going to say, I'm not going to try something different because if I screw up, I'm going to get yelled at. Or they're going to say, well, I got a problem here, but I don't want to tell anybody because I'm going to get yelled at. And then the problem snowballs and it gets bigger and bigger until it gets so large you can't fix it. And I've certainly seen that happen. So praise often and publicly and counsel people when necessary and in private. Make the tough decision. Don't make all the decisions, but make the tough decisions. And don't make the tough decisions without talking to people, without counsel, without input. But at the end of the day, a leader makes the tough decision. It's a lot easier to lead an organization when everything's going great and the decisions are easy and the economy's booming and all that. But in business, if you're in it for any period of time, you're going to have to make some very difficult decisions. And I can tell you, there's been a lot of nights I've laid awake thinking about a decision I have to make, or I've already made it and I got to implement it, or after I make that, because you know, you make decisions like this, it impacts people's life. And you just can't ignore that, but you can't not make the decision. If you don't make the decision, again, things are only going to get worse and it's going to impact more people. So good leaders make tough decisions. Be accessible. I think it's very important as a leader that people understand they can come and talk to you, they can give you bad news, they can give you good news on a rare occasion, but you need to be accessible. And I think that's very important for leaders. You know, you talk about management, walk around. It's true. I mean, people need to see you. When I go to one of our manufacturing facilities, I don't go talk to the managers first. I walk right on the factory floor. I go talk to people, because you can learn more about a business on the factory floor than any place else. Because if it's dirty or messy, or you see unsafe things, or people won't look you in the eye, you got a bad plant. If you got a bad plant, you got a bad business. Now, if you walk around and people engage with you, people talk to you, it's clean, it's orderly, then you got a good business. You know, I do all-employee meeting at all of our large facilities every year. And people know that they can ask me any question that they want. And I think that's key. And people, I can ask some tough questions. I mean, it ranged everything from benefits and wages to, we think you screwed this up, or, I mean, it's really, but that's encouraging to me. And I tell people, I'm going to give my little talk, and you're not leaving until I think you've asked enough questions, so you better get ready to ask them. And so people do that, and that's really encouraging me. I think that's such a powerful thing for people to feel like they've got access to the people that run the business. Because at the end of the day, you know, we're just like everybody else. I mean, you know, years ago I was doing the same thing everybody else was, and I've been fortunate to get in this role, but I still think the same way I did. I need to have input from everybody in the organization. And nothing makes me happier than to have a machinist run over and say, hey, Vic, I want to talk to you about something. And they do that, and that's great for me. And last, but certainly not least, you got to have fun. You know, jobs, they call it work for a reason, but you can have fun at work, you can enjoy your work, you can enjoy your job, your career, and people react to that. And if you think a leader is going to go on with this hangdog look on his face every day and look like he's not having any fun and, you know, the weight of the work world's on him, people are going to look the same way. And you don't want that. I mean, I can promise you we have belly laughs in my office every day, and often at each other's expense. I mean, we're kind of, you know, we have a pretty informal environment, and I make fun of people's clothes, and they make fun of, you know, my lack of hair and things like that. But there's no reason not to have fun at work. And people respond to that. People want to have fun. They don't want to come to work and just turn the crank. So those are my comments, and I'd be glad to answer any questions if anybody has them. I'm not going to let you go till people ask me some questions. We got a few minutes. Okay.
On the portfolio of ESCO, how did that come together?
Okay, so how did the portfolio come together? So actually, when we were spun off from Emerson, the question was, how did this very diverse portfolio come together? And we get that question a lot, but when we were spun off from Emerson, we were 90% defense, 10% industrial. There's a piece of each of those businesses that we built around. So our RF shield and test, for instance, we had a small business that did antenna pattern measurement for the government, and you did a lot of those types of things. Around that time, it was a small business. It was probably a $6 million business. Around that time, EMI and EMC testing became a lot more prevalent for commercial products. We saw that this was probably a good spot for us, and so we started making acquisitions there, and we've grown that to about a $160 million business. In the filtration side, we had done some aerospace business before. We understood it. We understand that's a much different business. You got to make big investments up front to get on a platform, but once you're on a platform, you're on it forever. So we started making acquisitions around that. And so the same could be made for each. The packaging business, we had a large business that we sold because it didn't make much money and it was very competitive. There was a small packaging business inside of it. We weren't going to get value for it, so we kept it. And, the original thought, well, we'll sell that when we start making more money, but turned into a great business. And so we've added to that more recently. We've doubled the size of it through acquisition. So there's a core of each of the businesses that we've built around, primarily through acquisition. We have some decent organic growth as well. But we had people in each of those businesses that understand it, because they are very different businesses. But some of us have been around for so long that we still kind of understand those businesses and kind of help as we try to grow them. Well, we got a student. You got to wait.
Hi. Could you briefly describe the sales and marketing operations in your company, and even with the 95% market share, how important customer relationship is, like a client relationship is?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me address the second half of that first. The reason we have 95% market share is not because we have the best, I think we do have the best product, but the primary reason is because we have an amazing customer support organization. So we have engineers that our customers have 24-hour access to when they have issues. And I'm not talking about a couple. I'm talking about there's probably 30 people in an organization. And they've developed relationships over time with those customers that have kept the competitors from coming in. That business has been around for 80 years. I was talking to some the faculty this morning about the fact we have this client conference every year for that specific business, our utility business. We have 1,200 clients that come to this thing. It's a week long. It's all technical papers. There's a lot of social things, a lot of talks, a lot of interaction. There's no way to replicate that. So it is really all about that interface with the customer. As far as the way we take the rest of our products, it depends. Some of them we do direct sales. Some we do through wet reps. Some we do through agents, and some distribution, and some a combination thereof. So it really depends on the specific business. So we don't take one approach. It's really very company specific, dependent on the business and the products and the market. The other thing I would say, we're talking about the emphasis you guys have on sales professionals here. That is a great thing. I can tell you those are great jobs. And I think it's really, people don't understand what an important piece that is of a business. Sales professionals are a very integral part of the organization, because if you don't get the orders, it doesn't matter how good of a manufacturer you are. But again, it's not, I think people think about it the wrong way. They think, okay, I'm going to go in and sell this product. It is really about developing that relationship with the customer. That relationship with the customer is what makes it sticky. And so they're going to come to you time after time if they've got a personal relationship with you. And the most important thing is when something gets screwed up, which it will, if you already have a relationship, that's going to be a much better way to fix it. I mean, people have problems. I mean, they just do. And, if you don't have a relationship, They're just going to cut you off and go to competitors. Yeah. So the question was, do I have to adjust my leadership style to deal with different cultures around the world? The short answer is no. I think we have to adjust the way we interact with people. But, well, maybe it's not no. Maybe I said that too quickly. The thing we always do is go in and say, look, you're now part of a U.S.-based public company. There are certain things that are non-negotiable. And, you know, in some countries around the world, you know, ethics are negotiable. In our business, they're not. And so we have a very direct conversation about it. And about a lot of other things. And so as a public company, there are certain things that have to be done a certain way. As far as leadership, I think people are people at the end of the day. I mean, there's, you know, certain cultures that you just can't go in, like, you know, the ugly American, which I don't think most Americans are ugly anyway, but you can't just charge in. So you have to have a little finesse in some countries. But what I found is people are people at the end of the day, and I think they react to the same thing. And we have operation in Norway and Finland. We have several in the UK. You know, we've had one in France. That's a tough place to do business. You know, China. And I think we've been successful because, for the most part, we have local leadership. Well, every place we have local leadership, including China. I mean, we started business in China 14 years ago. The 3 gentlemen that we bought it from are still there. That is unheard of in China. I mean, usually, you know, they punch a ticket and they're competing with you. You know, I can't tell you the number of people that have gotten Chinese operations, and then the next week, the people they bought it from are down the street competing with. So there are obviously you have to be sensitive to cultural differences, but I think at the end of the day, leadership, people respond to the same thing. I mean, again, it's back to treat people with respect, take care of your people, give an environment to excel in, and make tough decisions. And I think that's the same whether you're in China or whether you're here. Yeah.
You sort of answered the question I'm about to ask, but you talked about acquisitions a number of times. When you buy companies, how do you go about integrating them to your culture? How do you make acquisitions work seemingly a whole lot more effectively than the rest of the world is able to?
So the question is really about acquisitions and how we successfully integrate those. First of all, we don't always. We've had some missteps like everybody else, but I would say we've got a pretty good track record. The key to acquisitions, and it took me some time to figure it out, is the people. You can be buying the best product, the best technology, the best market position, and if you don't have people that are going to fit into your culture, you're going to fail. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so we spend a lot more time interacting with the people, getting to understand if they're going to fit in or not. It's a difficult thing because most of the people we buy business from are private businesses, an entrepreneur that started it, and that's their baby. And I totally get it. I mean, that's not me. That's not something I could do. But they own that business. They've maybe nurtured it from startup, and so they're giving it to somebody else. And that's a very difficult thing for most people to do. So we spend a lot of time, the back office stuff, that's easy stuff. So it's really about understanding the people and understanding if they're going to be a fit. I would say that every entrepreneur that wanted to stay with the business got to stay, and I would say have been successful. The vast majority of them don't. And I think they pretty quickly understand, this isn't me. I'm not a corporate guy. And Vic, I like you, but I'm going to go do something else. And that's probably okay, because typically they have organizations underneath them that are really ready to take over. Because most the people that we bought, most of the entrepreneurs, when we bought their businesses, they're selling it not to get rich. They're selling it because, I've done all I can do here. And I need more professional management. I need some other approach to be able to take my business to the next level. They're happy to take the money, too, don't get me wrong. But that's typically not the reason they sell the business. Yeah. Good question. The question was, I'd mentioned early on that you're going to be a good leader, Who do you observe? Or you observe people? Are there specific people that I observed that made me a better leader? There's a lot, honestly. It's a hard question. There were a lot of people in ROTC, honestly, that because I saw people there that had been to Vietnam. They came back and they were still normal people. They were able to talk. They treated us in a way. They challenged us. They pushed us. They were respectful of us. And so it was really that kind of thing where, they pushed you really hard, but they really took care of you. And you really noticed that. So I would say that was one. I was telling the group this morning, I was very fortunate. I got to work for Colin Powell for a year on his staff. And that's a man that, I'm telling you, he was the smartest guy I've ever met. But, I was a junior guy on his staff, so I always had the night shift when we were in the field. And he would come down, and there'd be a map up there, and, I was an intelligence officer at the time, so I was kind of tracking things, and he would pull up a chair. Okay, Lieutenant, tell me what's going on. And that was it. I mean, it was no pretense about anything. But I'm telling you, the guy was a genius. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. So when I was on the staff, I was in charge of what they call the All-Source Intelligence Center. So I had a group that kind of pulled, the intelligence data together. There was a book you put together, and on one page there was a picture, and the other page there was a little intel write-up. And so the first couple of times I took it to him, he's sitting there, and I'm a little intimidated. I'm 22, 23 years old. I'm a first lieutenant, and here's his general officer. He's flipping through the book like this. I'm kind of pissed off. I'm like, this guy's not even reading this thing. So, and I said, I had 6 people that spent a lot of time doing that. And so, like the 4th week, he's flipping through, and he asked me a question. And it was a very probing, detailed question. So the next week I was watching, his eyes were going, he was reading every word of it. But, it was lost on me. But the guy was really a smart guy. So I saw a guy like that. I mean, he walks in the room, he owns the room. I mean, he really does. And not because, hey, look at me, just a guy that everybody had a lot of respect for. I guess the other guy, my boss, my old boss, I worked for the guy for a lot of years, a lot of respect for him. He did a lot of things right. He did some things wrong. And so I kind of learned some of those too. I mean, he could be a little bit of a bull in a china shop, and he was kind of old school. And the fact that he told me I was too young, I mean, he couldn't have been that smart. But, I worked for the guy for a long time, and so he's another guy that I really picked up a lot from. So it's all about hiring people. Really, by the time somebody gets to me, they're qualified to do the job, or they wouldn't be there. So I really, again, look at fit. Is this a person I see that has the same ethics that I do, that has the same regard for people that I do, that thinks not exactly the same, because that kind of belies what I said earlier about embracing the differences, but people from a business perspective, they're going to have the same approach that I would have. So really, it's more about fit. I look for people without an ego, because that is a killer for me. I mean, and people that aren't to be political, because I always tell people the enemy's on the outside, not the inside. And so it really is about fit. And really, if people enjoy what they do, I mean, I don't want a crank turner. I want somebody that is excited to be there, that wants to be there, that wants to be part of the team.
When it comes to leadership, what's the difference between trusting your gut and trusting data?
That's a bad question to ask me, because believe it or not, or not surprising, I'm sure I'm always going with the gut. Having said that, I've got a great CFO. I spent a lot of time with him. He's more of a data guy, and so we try to make those decisions together. But at the end of the day, if I've got to flip one way or the other, I'm going with my gut. Just because, I don't know, that's just me. I'm not an overly detailed kind of guy. And, if you can't trust your own instincts, then, I mean, if the data just absolutely says it's a stupid thing to do, you got to be smart enough to listen to it. And I'd say the place where you can get in trouble with that is on acquisitions. You can fall in love with an acquisition and just look past the fact that, the people aren't going to fit in, or, the numbers don't look like, but man, I really love this, so I'm going to go do it anyway. So that's a time where I feel like, I get a lot of counseling from my people, that says, you know, Vic, this is not a good idea. You got to back off a little bit. But 9 times out of 10, you got to go with your gut because, you know, you interact with people, you know the people, you know what their strengths are, and sometimes you got to go with your gut. And I will say the times I've been really wrong about people, I knew I was wrong, and I just looked past it. And it's honestly a very frustrating thing. I mean, I put a guy in charge of one of the subsidiaries one time. He was a CFO. He wanted the job so bad. I knew it was a bad idea, and I did it anyway. And I felt horrible. I talked earlier about one of those nights where you lay awake. I had to fire the guy. And I put him there. I put him in a position to fail. And that's a horrible feeling to do that. And, you know, so, you know, I knew it was a bad decision. I did it anyway. And I went with my gut. So, all right, should have gone with my gut, but I did. Anyway.
Mr. Vic Richey, give him a hand. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Wow. Really, really good. Dr. Thresher.